Angeba Sojola here. In this video, we'll be basically discussing one of the most strategic elements which you can find in South Africa. This strategic element is basically known as chromium, right? Now, it is believed that South Africa has about 72% of all global reserves of chromium, right? It is found in a place known as the Bushveld Igneous Complex, right, which is mostly in Limpopo, right? You find this chromium in a place known as Steerport Valley, right, which is known to produce about 75% of the global's ferrochrome requirements. This chrome that exists in Limpopo exists in very high concentrations. The concentrations of the ore is believed to sit at about 40% to about 44% of chromium in the ore body, which you find in the Bushveld Igneous Complex. Now, when we add chromium to a substance like steel, for instance, right, this has an effect of achieving certain mechanical properties within the steel, right? Now, there are four types of mechanical properties which you can achieve by adding chromium to steel, right? But it is important to know that different amount of chromium which is added to steel produce different impact on the mechanical property of steel, right? For instance, the first property that you can get, mechanical property that you can get by adding chromium to steel is a property known as hardness. It has the ability to harden steel, make it harder so that the steel can perform uh, jobs or duties under certain conditions, right? Now, that is the first mechanical property. The second mechanical property is that it increases toughness, right? When you speak of a tough product, you speak of a product that has the ability to absorb a level of deformation without necessarily getting damaged, right? So, and it can sustain that absorption of energy to an extent, right? So it adds, it increases to toughness, right? Number three, it is wear resistant, right? So when it comes to friction, when it comes to abrasion, things, environments that have to do with friction and abrasion, it is ideal to add chromium, right, to adjust this mechanical property. And the fourth one, right, is basically it's anti-corrosive, it's anti-rust, right? Now, when you add chromium to steel, for instance, right, when that substance reacts with the environment, right, let's say with oxygen, right, it basically reacts with oxygen, creates a chromium oxide, and then that film of, of chromium oxide, right, acts as a shield that prevents rust, right? So these are the number of mechanical properties that you can achieve with the various additions of varied additions of concentrations of chromium in steel. For example, ferrochrome, right, contains about 65% of chromium, right, and about 34% of iron, right, with about less than 1% of carbon, right? That basically produces something called a chromium steel, right? You use that sort of steel in environments that produce high wear, right? Abrasion, abrasive environment, resist friction, high friction environment, wear resistant, right? So you use this type of steel in those type of environments. Then you find something called a stainless steel, right? When you speak of a stainless steel, right, you speak of something that has chromium, right, mixed in the steel that sits between about 10.5%, right up to 18, right? Now, if you look at a stainless steel that has chromium between 11% and 13%, it is mostly products which are used as cutlery, right? Our forks, our spoons, our teaspoons, our knives, especially stainless steel versions of that, right? So the cutlery version of things, right, contains about 11 to about 13% of chromium, right? But the stainless steels can go up to about 18% when you go to environments, right? When you need that sort of stainless steels for environments which are very highly corrosive, right? They produce rust a lot. So stainless steels are good for to harden, right, the steel and to make it anti-corrosion. And then if you add about 15% of chromium, but this time mix it with nickel, right? You can be able to produce a wire called a nichrome wire, right? So a nichrome wire is basically an electric heat resistant producer, right? So it is used for things like the wire in the light bulb, right? The wire that you find in a stove that keeps the heat up, the wire you find in an urn or a kettle, right? That basically heats up stuff, right? That's a nichrome wire made of about 15% uh, 15% chromium, right? And about 60% nickel. And chromium is used also to produce something called stellites, right? These are basically surgical instruments which are used in the medical field to operate and for dentistry, things like that, right? So this sort of increase or addition of chromium sits at about 20% of chromium, right? So if you want to produce a surgical instrument, right, a medical tool, right, you will have to use a steel that has a 20% chromium content. Another um, product which uses chromium, right, is the product that is known as a high-speed steel, which uses about 3 to about 5% of chromium.